Hey, yo, this is Imperetiv. You're now tuned in to the Renaissance Show with Alex Kuchma. Listen to the kid.
All right, so you guys are now tuned in to the Renaissance Show. My name is Alex Kuchma, and I have here with me, I would probably consider you a friend at this point. We've been communicating back and forth for years at this point. I ended up speaking to you first for the Vancouver kind of chapter of my Canadian hip hop book that I'm putting together, and since then you had moved to Ontario and you started kind of working with some people that I was really interested in, and I spoke to you again, kind of a follow up for that book project. And since then, you've just been on a roll. And we didn't even speak that long ago. We spoke maybe July, August. We were speaking about this prior to hitting record here, but your trajectory over the last little while. This dude here has worked with cats like Rick Hyde. He has a new song out with Rick Hyde and Benny the Butcher. That will end up coming out probably by the time this interview airs. That will be available probably on 7-inch. Well, it will be out on 7-inch, but probably sold out by the time this interview ends up airing. But the dude's been getting air on Eclipse, DJ Premier station, and he's now where are you located now? You're not in Toronto, right? You went to Niagara
I was in Niagara. I literally just moved to London. I moved here last Monday, which I started, depending on when this is aired. So that was November 1st,
Gotcha.
2021. I'm now in London, Ontario, which ironically, in a full circle sense, which seems to be a theme, not only for my first project, but just my career in general. London is actually where I lived 13 years ago before I moved to Vancouver. So here I am back in London, Ontario.
Man, that's amazing. For those listening at home, I'm speaking to Imperetiv. Man, what's good on your end? How's the last couple of months treated you from your perspective? It seems just uncannily amazing from my perspective. But from your end, what's been the feel over the last couple months? How are you doing?
It's kind of weird, I guess, when you're like experiencing it like firsthand, from point of view, because things have actually been really hectic, and for most people like yourself, you get to see what's on the screen, you get to see the social medias and just the drops and those things, right? And like people say, that's the highlight reel, right? Like behind the scenes, I've been going through some family stuff and obviously this move, I've had to move. So for the past 2 months, despite everything you've seen on social media, I have not made a beat. I think I made one beat in the last 2 months. Like I've been living in my brother's, basement, blessed for a roof over my head and all that. But, it just wasn't the right environment to be making music. But that being said, I'll always say there's more to making music than making music. So during those last 2 months or so, I've been working on the behind the scenes stuff. So just working on releases, marketing, emailing DJ Eclipse, and I want to say, I believe it. I'd like to think it was DJ Eclipse. I think he works a bit like a gatekeeper for Premier. So I think he passed on the song to Premier. So
what's crazy to me is that in order for these people like DJ Premier and DJ Eclipse and these kind of major radio shows and hip hop icons, right? Like these are legends in hip hop, and we've all grown up listening to their music, and we've all loved shit like Nonfiction and Gangstar and everything that these guys have done as individuals. It's crazy to me that these guys are at the status that they're at, but because obviously their job is being a DJ as well, they're so tapped into what's going on in the underground scene. I see people get played on their shows that I think are dope, but never in a million years would I expect them to see the type of limelight that those two bring forward and are able to, I don't know, like the tier that they're on, right? Like DJ Premier and DJ Eclipse are giants, yet they're so tapped in, and that must mean that they're going to the same blogs that I go to. They're following the same type of people on Instagram. They're really actively digging and looking for new music and staying up to date with week after week after week. We all know who they work with, and that circle is a lot smaller than clearly who they're actually fucking with and listening to on a regular basis. And that's always just blown my mind, but they've been steadily like that for forever.
Yeah, for years. I mean, I think it's so different too. I mean, as we've talked about before, and most people like probably realize. Some people might not realize, but there's different genres. I want to say of underground hip hop. For the genre that we're kind of talking about, this grimy boom bap, Griselda-esque. I think guys like Eclipse in that. It's different than say like more of like a trap underground. Like those guys, I think like the radio stations, the DJs for that stuff is just different. But I think this grimy boom bap, as as shown with sales in vinyl and stuff like that, is still this kind of grassroots and holding on to this, like OG feel of the way, like it's the culture. You know what I mean? And I think like because when I emailed. The first time I actually emailed Eclipse, there's probably a few songs I could have sent him before, but I'm always learning the ropes. Every day I'm learning something new. The first song I sent him was I Have Sadiq, which I know is a song that you really like with Ason Eastwood and SLNC.
Shout out to Ason Eastwood, yeah. Yeah,
that was the first song I sent to Eclipse. It never got played because my guess, maybe not so much Ason. He just didn't know who I was, I think, at the time. And whether he liked the song or not, maybe it just wasn't a radio jam. It is just a really grimy boom bap song. But he still responded to me. He's like, "Hey, what up? I'll check it out." You know what I mean? So even that, because I've sent songs now since then to guys like Static, DJ Muggs, and I haven't got a response back. But for Eclipse to even just be like, "Yo, I got it. I'll check it. Thanks, E." You know what I mean? Like something so simple like that, at least it's like, oh, okay, word,
Yeah, man, it's a beautiful thing. And I want to say the business model on your end, the marketing strategies that you've employed over the last couple months, I feel like that's really been the difference. Because like you said, you were putting out shit like I Have Sadiq. You were putting out these songs that were entering this wave. And sure, names like Benny the Butcher or Rick Hyde are a little bit higher of a caliber than some of the other names that you've worked with in the past. I recognize that. Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like the marketing between how you ended up putting out Full Circle, for example, to how you're marketing the new Benny the Butcher and Rick Hyde song, it's almost night and day. And I feel like you're treating this a lot more seriously at this point, and you're treating the art more serious. You're treating it like here's a single and it's worth your fucking time, right? It's not something that you just listen to and say, oh, maybe leave a YouTube comment or something. You're treating this like, no, this art is serious. It's worthy of your time. It is legitimate. It's authentic. And this is the shit that you should be checking out for. And I feel like you've made people believe that. And that's a hard thing to do, I think, as an artist. I think every artist wants that and strives for it, but I see it in your marketing and how you've positioned yourself as an artist over the last little while. So much different than how I've seen you position yourself as an artist in the past.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying in a lot of ways is true. And again, I think it all comes from perspective and point of view, right? Because from my point of view, I'm not necessarily seeing those kind of things. I'm just like, but a lot of these like moves that I'm making are calculated even from years ago, like from even when I was ready to drop Full Circle. Like I had like these grand visions and ideas of where, but it was all, I've had this Benny and Rick Hyde track since January. But the second I got it,
when we last spoke, and you were like, oh man, I can't wait for you to hear this shit. Like, yeah.
So, I mean, I've had it for a minute, but the thing is if I went and released it right away, like even as excited as I was to have that and let people hear it, I knew that if I did that, it wasn't going to have the same impact. So, I mean, I knew I've been working on the one project for, I think, even maybe since we first talked, which was Burial Plots and Pyramid Schemes. But I've had tracks for that. I think one of the first tracks I got has Josiah the Gift on it. And I've been sitting on that track for years, and I just knew it was a perfect intro. And to me, good music doesn't age, right? And especially in this grimy boom bap now, too, like the sound is kind of, you know what to kind of expect in a sense. But I knew like that I needed to get a Full Circle off my chest. And it worked well as a first project and a testing ground for a lot of strategies and understanding how streaming platforms worked. I have such a better understanding of how because there's the algorithms, even Instagram, and my Instagram's changes year to year as well. And that's learning the algorithms. It's learning what works. Because I used to post beats on Instagram, but I don't do that anymore. I feel there was a period where I was like, okay, listen, I know how to make beats, and here's all my beats. And then it switched to a point where it's like, now I know how to make beats. Now you just got to check for the music, right? Yeah. So it's a lot of these shifts, and a lot of this stuff was just like really brainstormed beforehand. Like I want to say 3 years ago, and seeing the bigger picture. So that's kind of what's unfolding now. Like even this year, like I knew I had the ASUN track. I knew I had a feature with Westside Gun on it. And it was all timing and how I wanted to release that. Cause I knew ASUN would be, it was all kind of like a step ladder,
Man, the way you've been doing it, regardless, it's working, and I see it. Not only do I see it in your own posts, but I see it in how other people are talking about you. Right? We're in the same Griselda Facebook groups. We're in the same hip hop Facebook groups, Canadian hip hop Facebook groups, and these. It seems like the fans are starting to really recognize the power that you have, almost in a way. And I think we might have had this conversation in the summer, but it feels like in part that you've almost escaped the Canadian hip hop community. And I think in those terms, when I think about artists like Daniel Son and Asun Eastwood and Future Wave, these guys are Canadian artists, but we both know the Canadian hip hop community. We both know the BC Underground hip hop Facebook groups and those kind of things. And we know how that is structured. And there's a sense of almost an inferiority complex. With Canada and Canadian art as a whole, there's a sense of kind of inner circle that comes with that. But what these guys are doing, what Daniel Son, what Future Wave is doing, these guys are separating themselves from that completely, right? Most of those people that in those Canadian hip hop groups, they don't know anything about Daniel Son. They don't know anything about Future Wave. And if they do know, they probably don't realize that they're in Canada because they don't market themselves as Canadian artists, right? They market themselves as hip hop artists, and that's always came first. And I feel like you, over the last year, have really transitioned from being a Canadian hip hop artist to just being a hip hop artist in general. And I shout outs to Canadian hip hop. Like I think I'm probably one of the biggest lovers of Canadian hip hop there is, but at the same time,
that's a fact.
There is something to be said about how the Canadian hip hop scene is structured, and how this kind of community in Toronto, and not just Toronto, but you have artists like Chong Wizard or people like Vago out on the West Coast that are tapped into this as well. People like Nicholas Craven out in Quebec. But these guys are not part of the Canadian hip hop scene, right? They're not Chadio. They're not Epic and So-So and Chaps and them. They're not Classified and Buck 65. These guys are treated almost completely differently. And I feel like you've entered that sphere as of now, and it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to be repetitive, but it's that point of view, and as you're saying these things, you're making me realize things that I wasn't even realizing. And what you're saying is I used to, when I was living in Vancouver, I was proud to live in Vancouver. Like, even though I'm from Ontario and moved to Vancouver, I lived in Vancouver longer than I ever lived in any city. So I very much consider Vancouver a home. Yeah. I think a lot of people still and I started music in Vancouver. So when people ask and they're like, where are you from? I usually put Vancouver just because it's easier than explaining the whole thing. But I used to have, social media. I used to have Vancouver in my profile. I was a Vancouver producer, and then obviously I moved, and then I was like, well, I'm not going to put Niagara. So I just kind of left it out, and I've left that out now. And so it's kind of it's funny just around the timing as well of what you're saying as well in this transition of, and I've seen it even in my numbers, I check, I'm a numbers guy. I like looking at stats. It lets me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. And my streaming stats would say that my largest crowd is the United States, both on Apple Music and Spotify.
Has that always been the case since Full Circle? Or
it hasn't been the case. No, it wasn't. No, I think tracks starting with ASUN. I think that track even SLNC he's from North Carolina, but ASUN's another one that we could talk about that has that crossover for American market. For a while, my music was big over in Paris as well. So I think that was shout out Pack of the Plug and guys like DJ Ransha.
Is Pack of the Plug in France?
I believe he's in France. I believe that. Yeah, I believe so.
Oh, shout outs to him, man. He's super dope. I love his YouTube channel and everything that he ends up putting out. He's introduced me to a lot of new artists, and from what I hear, because I'm not an artist myself and I don't deal with a lot of the back end stuff, but from what I hear, he's doing it legitimately. He's getting approval and permissions, and he's not just like bootlegging shit on and ripping it on to YouTube without the artist's permission. I've seen numerous artists shout out Paka as someone that's doing it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, even as well. I mean, the way he's built his platform, he got guys like, when I was looking around, like trying to figure out what I was gonna do is like, okay, well, I see people posting the packet, so how do I get that? Like, my whole thing is like, I will never. I'll see what other people are doing, and I'm never like, oh, well, I guess I'll wait until he wants to post my stuff. It's like, no, I'm gonna go out and get it. So I'm like, I'm DMing him, I'm sending him YouTube messages, and then now he's actually been really dope. He's been following a lot of my moves and stuff like that. Now, I think the first thing he posted of mine was G4 Jag and 448 Brad, the track 222, which came out I think October 2020. So I think that was the first thing he posted. So he's seen stuff since then, and he's like, yo, man, like, he saw the Rick Hyde thing. He's like, you deserve this. He's like, everything you send me is top quality, because I'm sure he gets a lot of content.
Yeah, man, 100%. And it really is top quality. Like, if you listen to Full Circle, and I advise people to take the time and listen to a record like Full Circle, and come back and listen to this interview, but also listen to shit like Bricks, and listen to the new single as well. I haven't heard it myself, but I'm sure it's going to be dope. But the quality of this art is top notch, right? When we compare it to other people, and maybe that ends up being a thing in a lot of cases as well, but not with everyone. But I think there's a quality expectation that people have when they listen to quote unquote Canadian hip hop, and people that are within those Facebook groups and that kind of inner scene, and they don't necessarily expect the type of quality that you're delivering on, right? Like the art itself has surpassed that in many ways. As you said, or as I said, I think earlier, but it's treated seriously, not just from a marketing standpoint, but also from an art standpoint. And the quality is so distinct. It's so realized.
I mean, I think there's a big thing to be said, and this is for anyone listening that, you know, is trying to either pursue production, beat making, rapping, artistry of any. No one's going to take you serious until you take yourself seriously. I remember from, like, you know, there's this one moment I was working in a skateboard shop, and the owner of the skate shop was talking to one of his friends, and his friend was going to a life coach. And I don't know why this is just stuck in my mind ever since then, but he was saying that the life coach he was trying to be a comedian. And then the life coach said, okay, well, introduce yourself to me. He's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. I work at, you know, this job. And he's like, well, right there, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because that's not who you are. You are a comedian. Yeah. And I took that shit to heart. So, like, it was like, you know, a few years ago, it was like, I stopped being Nate Butcher, the guy who works this job, to I am Imperetiv, and I am a hip hop producer. And that mentality, when you believe it yourself, it starts coming through everything you do, and people will believe it.
Man, that's beautifully said. I think a lot of people can benefit from that advice. Not just, as you said, the comedian. I think it's strong in that example. But almost in anything you do, you want to carve out the identity of yourself, of who you want to be, and almost a fake it till you make it type thing, right? But truly believe it. Yeah.
I mean, on that, like, I saw there's a social media meme, and I didn't watch the full clip, but they were talking about how Drake, even, like, he used to spend $5,000 to rent a Rolls Royce, and now he's bought the same Rolls Royce. And so then I think it was Music Entrepreneurship Club. They were chatting about the whole fake it till you make it. I didn't watch it, but I could have an idea of what they were saying. I have the general, I'm sure but I think the general consensus would be, I think there's a fine line of faking it till you make it, to like there's a pros and cons to it.
Sure.
You know, like, I think there's a faking it in the sense of believing and being over confident. But I mean, like, people will know if you're lying, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So I think there's a fine line there.
Yeah. I agree. I think people will call you on your bullshit, if you're not delivering the quality that they expect that identity to deliver, right? So if you're a wannabe rapper and you're doing this, but you're not doing it up to the quality that people expect rappers to do, but you're doing it to the quality that people expect the 9 to 5, oh, my little nephew raps, you should check him out, then people are going to associate you with that. And if you try to present an identity that's different from that, people are going to call you on it, right? But if the product is up to par with the greats and with the people that hold that identity, then yeah, don't sell yourself short, and represent that identity and be that identity, feel that identity, and introduce that identity to the world. Yeah, 100%.
And I think what and you've sparked some stuff in my mind about transitions, and I have a feeling that throughout, we're coming to the end of this year, and I write down yearly goals, start of every year now. This is I never used to do this, but I do it now. If we jump on a call again, like in July 2022, I think we're going to see another transition, by your standards and that. And right now, if we're talking about identity and faking it till you make it, like me going and getting like art by Sep, it wasn't it wasn't like, let's say, I don't know how Fly God art came about for Westside Gun and the relationship there, but it's different from our perspective, and maybe it didn't, like, I paid Sep for the art, right? But as artists deserve to be paid for their skills, I believe that. But I'm not fronting like it's like I discovered Sep by any means, or if you look at my Instagram page right now, it's a picture of me with the Fly God art, and I'm being very real and humbling. Like, this is like, I'm kind of in that period where, when maybe I shouldn't, I was going to say Travis Scott, but it just might be a bad timing to talk about him. But I mean, I think it applies. I think it applies though, in the sense that when Travis Scott first got put on, you could hear in a lot of his music his influences, the Kanye's, the Kid Cudis. And then now, a few years later, he's very much just Travis Scott. It's not like the shadow of Kanye. It's not the shadow of T.I. It's not the shadow of Kid Cudi. He is Travis Scott in his own right. I think right now what we're seeing with myself, just being kind of self-aware on it, is I'm going after the things that I want, working with Benny the Butcher, working with Rick Hyde, hopefully Conway and Westside Gun eventually. I mean, I could list a ton of artists that I would love to work with. Having Sep do art, these are the things where, like, I'm looking up to these guys and being like, well, that's the shit that I want. And now that I've got, and then I think the transitions that we'll start to see is it's going to be more me now, like, getting Sep to do the art was also it was a goal that I wanted to do, just to have him do it. But it was strategic as well, just because I knew people would recognize his art and his style, and then automatically in their mind, subconsciously relate it to Fly God, Westside Gun, and Griselda. That was the strategy there. But I think in the future, you'll be like, okay, it's Imperetiv, and he's now, like, I love art, and I'm not. People might be like, oh, he's trying to be like Westside Gun and on his art shit. Like, I've been collecting art since my snowboard days. So I think in the future, in the transition, you'll be like, okay, now it's Imperetiv. He's curating art and getting artists that we haven't heard of before. And I think that will be the sort of the next transition and growth.
I wanted to talk about the art because I think that's another aspect of this kind of business strategy and marketing strategy that I think has paid off really well for you. It's not just Seb doing the art for the new 7-inch with Benny the Butcher and Rick Hyde, but also the previous artwork that you had for Bricks as well is done by a very kind of recognizable face in this industry. And I don't know the name off heart. I'm sure you do, but the
Mr. Squat Dead Face.
Yes. And his art is recognizable, right? People check out that shit, and it's immediately identifiable as this grimy boom bap hip hop wave that we're in.
He did the cover for Fly God is an Awesome God too. He's done artwork for Knowledge the Pirate, Stove God Cooks. So I mean, that was again a strategy move. I actually had the Step art before I had the Squat Dead Face art. But again, it was just timing and strategy, and it just made sense to drop Bricks and Squat art first.
Yeah, man. Like he also just did the Matt the Vinyl Hunter tape for Danielson, and that shit came
Yeah.
out really really dope as well. He's been tapped into this scene, right? So it's not even just the larger artists, but it's artists like yourself. It's these smaller independent artists that are putting out work, and it's coming together as painting this identity for him as here's this guy that's tapped into this scene, and those that work with him are therefore recognized as in this scene. It's a really it presents your art in a really authentic way, right? Here's a dude that's for a single. Like, this isn't an album. These are 7-inch singles. Well, this is a 7-inch single, and the other was a digital single, and you're putting the effort and the value into it and treating it with value right from the jump, right? You're paying serious artists to do shit for you for a single, right? And I think that speaks to the audience to say, hey, here's someone we need to tune in and listen to.
So I think part of that comes from just my own learning from releasing Full Circle, in talking to industry professionals and people who have done the releases. Junk would be one of them from Vancouver.
Yep.
Obviously I'm kind of
Junk
in
is
the
on
collective
Full Circle as well.
Yeah. But another is like, you know, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of research. You know, that's the stuff people don't hear about. That's the stuff people just think, you know, marketing plans and release strategies and what I post and stuff. People just think that miraculously just comes out of nowhere. But the truth is, like, I read a lot and I look into stuff. So a lot of that single promotion and idea comes from Russ.
Okay.
So Russ has a book. Russ has a book called "It's All in Your Head. Get Out of Your Way." So that I would recommend to anyone to read. There's a lot of little gems in there. If you follow him on social media, he drops a ton of gems as well. Any of his interviews and stuff like that. But he was one of the big, more outspoken artists, especially with TuneCore, talking about the one song a month release. Albums are kind of dead. That kind of strategy. And I'm not going to quote it word for word, but he talks about how giving each song its own stage. These days making music isn't cheap either, right? Like, I'll be very, like, I have no problem being honest. So a track for me, so I make the beat, so that doesn't cost anything. I do commission, I use typically Jamie Cuse at Nova Studios to mix and master. We're looking at about $350 a song, if not, give or take. Just depends on how long we take, but it's probably been around there. And I'd say he's one of the best in the country. One of the top studios, one of the top engineers. So that cost me about $350. Then you're looking at art on top of that. Now I can do my own art, but as we've talked about for bricks and under the scope, it made more sense for me to commission other people. So then you're looking at art on top of that. If I was looking at my streaming revenue right now, I've made enough to fund one song. Now I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm just trying to paint a light and shed some light on the industry and how why promoting a single and putting it on such a stage and such a pedestal is so beneficial. Is if one song is $350, imagine what a 10-track project, a 12-track project, 18-track project is going to cost you, right? And then you're asking
same sort of acknowledgement. Then the cost isn't worth it.
Exactly. So if you're still building a fan base, like I am, I'm not oblivious. I'm still building. Yep. Putting one song and focusing on one song, especially with Spotify algorithms and stuff like that. That one song could turn my current 500 followers to 1,500 to 2,000. So, and if I'm putting money into it, I'm damn well going to promote it and push that one song. Like, that one song, digital or not, that's my one T-shirt that I'm going to push. Like, it's my painting. It's my, so that's the way I kind of treat it. And a lot of the info and gems that I've got have come from guys like Russ, promoting kind of this single release strategy.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic. I haven't read that book. I'm a big believer in reading about hip hop culture and doing your homework and just gaining that knowledge. And my bookshelves upstairs are completely stacked full of hip hop gems. And I do a lot of reading myself, and I've seen that book in bookstores. But the thing is, I tend to find, and maybe this is a poor way of thinking about it, but I tend to find the best hip hop books aren't in bookstores. And
I mean, you're not wrong. But this Russ one, I would definitely recommend. I would recommend it for sure. It's a cheap one. It's an easy read. Ironically enough, Russ and I both share. Actually, if you look at old pictures of me, I kind of look like Russ and I looked at similar, but we actually both have 2 different colored eyes.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever realized that. I feel like that's something girls would realize. I watch shit with I was watching fucking, what was it? The Lemon video by Conway and Method Man. And I've watched that video a bunch of times, right? And I've listened to the song way more than that. And I know the video fairly well. And I'm watching this the other day with Sam, and she says, why does that guy only have one earbud in? And I'm like, what? How do you pick up on that? That's the shit that you end up realizing. She was talking about Method Man. Method Man had like one AirPod in his ear or whatever, and it was like, what? That's crazy. I didn't even realize that dude was wearing a mask, like a face mask. I don't pick up on that shit at all. But no, I never realized that about you. But no, the Russ book is interesting because Russ is portrayed as a, I don't know. I don't listen. Okay, so full clarity. I don't really listen to Russ. I've checked out a couple things that he's done musically, and
I'm sure I can guess which ones those are. That would be the one with Benny on it, or the one with Absol on it.
Possibly. I can't even remember to be completely fair. But I have checked out a couple things, thinking, maybe I should check out this Russ guy because people talk about him. But And this may be completely wrong, but I associate him with people like Hobson, people like what's another good example in kind of that field? People like NF, Joyner Lucas. Yeah, sure. These people that have kind of marketed their own fan bases in a lot of ways, rather than gaining the respect of the hip hop fan base. And I generally don't value their contributions, I guess, and that sounds really shitty, and I probably should in a lot of ways, but I don't really respect them as hip hop artists in a lot of ways, which is crazy. Like as an individual and as a hustler in this game and making art and putting it into the world, all respect. Like these guys are successful and doing it well, and they should make a living off of what they like doing, and that's awesome that they're achieving that. But I don't put them in the same circle as hip hop cats. That are like
that's fair. I mean, I don't listen to a ton of Russ myself. I'll just on the record, I don't listen to a ton of Russ. Sure. I think I was getting into my biggest intrigue with Russ is his success, and the his candidness of putting that out there for artists like myself to take those gems and do what I want with it. You know what I mean? And that's why. Anyone listening, even yourself, I would say the book's an easy read. You could probably read it in a day. It's nothing, but there is gems in there, and I will say that.
What you just shared about putting the song on the stage and the treating the song on that treating the song with that same sort of seriousness that you would treat an album. That's beautiful. That's amazing. I never quite thought about it in those ways, especially when you break down the cost versus reward kind of financial aspect of it. But that's a crazy gem. Like I said, I've been so impressed by how you've been doing things.
I mean, if you're getting artwork as well, especially from guys like Squat Deadface, if you're getting art from guys like Sepp, that is art. That's not just cover art. And how do I explain this different? Like cover art where you just got, you got a picture of the rapper, you got some text and whatever. That's just like regular run-of-the-mill cover art. No one really cares if that's on a print. No one cares. I mean, some people might if they really love the song, but you know what I mean? Like it's not art. Right? Guys like Sepp and Squat Deadface are providing art. So if you put this song on the stage, then you can take this art. Like it's no longer just the song. It's everything around the song. Like you can market the lyrics. You know what I mean? You could put the lyrics on a print. Like there's so much more that you can do, and you can get creative around this one song. Just like you would with an album. But at the end of the day, it's all pushing back on this one song, this one product that you've invested in. And why wouldn't you? There was for a bit of this year, I think I was doing like songs every 2 weeks. Ideally, the reason why a song a month works well, you would have 2 weeks before the release, 2 weeks after the release. You know what I mean? And you can like push for like, that's a full month of, like right now with this Under the Scope, I think I'm doing like over a month of promo on this song.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Yeah, the rollouts have been incredible, and they've been patient. That's another thing. I feel like artists don't have patience. And I feel like the good artists do have patience, right? They respect the rollout, and they take their time to make people actually want to value the art. They make people value the art before they even get the art. And that's an incredible thing to do, but it requires patience, right? You're not just, I recorded this last night and I can't wait for people to hear it. Well, let's make people hear it, right? There's a tremendous value in having that patience, in being methodical with it, right? And taking the time that's needed in order to make sure that it's best received.
Definitely. I mean, and your patience is like we were saying, if you believe that you are something and you project that identity, if you believe and you have that patience that this song is worth it, that people need to wait for it, people will start to believe that as well. Like right now with streaming, music is so readily available for everyone. It's right there. Like I'll admit it myself. Like if people that don't know, Westside Gun is one of my favorite artists. And you would think that, okay, release day, like, yeah, I'm saving it, but I may not have listened to that because it is on streaming right away. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I don't listen to it now, I can listen to it later. This isn't like, back in the day when the Beatles were releasing a vinyl record and you had to be in line at the record store. And if you didn't get your record, you'd have to wait until you went to your friend's place to listen to it on vinyl. You know what I mean? Like things have changed now. And then just to reference another book is Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, The Untold Story of the Wu-Tang Clan's $1 Million is a long album, $1 Million Secret Album, the devaluation of music and America's new public enemy number one. So that was written by, talks about the Silver Rings, who basically made that one Wu-Tang album.
Yes. And
throughout this book, there's a lot of gems as well about the devaluation of music. And it's interesting to relate that book to what we're seeing in the underground hip hop. Big Ghost is a big pusher of this. RJ Payne has been a big one of it. There's a few other artists I just can't think of off the top of my head where they're doing similar to what I'm doing. And this is, of getting my ideas kind of from those guys like that, is releasing it first exclusively, either on their own platform or on Bandcamp, where the real core fans are going to go. And if they want to hear it, they'll spend the money, they'll support, and then releasing it on streaming after. So now you're creating that line at the record store when it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Do you follow Big Stowe or Michael Stover on Twitter?
Michael Stover? I don't think I do.
Okay, you should. He drops a lot of these types of gems, and I feel like you would like him a lot. But he's a big believer in the rollout, in patience, and he's a big believer in creating a website and making sure that your identity is out there for the world, and to value yourself as an artist and that identity statement that we were talking about earlier. He drops a lot of gems. He's a hip hop journalist. He's done a lot over the past 10 years that I've known him. But he worked with Dead End Hip Hop. He did their site for a long period of time, and I believe contributed in other ways as well. He worked at Kev Nottingham. I've done podcasts with him in the past, and he's a great dude. But he's also a hip hop artist. He's a hip hop artist from Michael, you're gonna kill me, but I think Ohio, somewhere kind of in that Midwestern area. I'm not from the States, so it's sometimes hard for me to remember.
How do you spell his last name?
Stover, Stover, but his Twitter handle is just Big Stowe, Bigsto.
Oh, okay.
And for anyone that's an artist that's engaging in this conversation that we're having right now, and you're finding it useful, because I'm finding it useful, and I'm not even an artist, but I think that this is kind of shaping the way I view a lot of things. And having conversations like this, I think Big Stowe is someone that you should definitely end up taking the time out to listen to. The Silver Rings book as well is another one that I've seen before, but I guess it doesn't. I generally go for hip hop history books, right? So people, books that are maybe long form interviews where they're digging deep into behind the scenes type shit.
Right.
Things like The Big Payback by Dan Charnas, which is kind of a secondary look at here's how this industry evolved, or things like Can't Stop, Won't Stop by Jeff Chang, or these kind of deep theoretical books about hip-hop theory and academic texts, scholarly texts on hip-hop culture and what that means. I'm a big fan of that kind of literature body as well. But I tend to stay away from these for artists books that are meant to school them on game. But I feel like there's a lot of value in doing so, because having this conversation here has brought forward different ideas about how hip hop is structured as an industry, right? And how what people are doing right and what people are doing wrong, and how they can kind of move forward. And that's most beneficial if you're an artist. But I think even if you just appreciate hip hop as a culture and you want to understand hip hop as a culture, understanding how people are marketing themselves, I think has intrinsic benefit and value. Like Dan Charnas's book, The Big Payback, that's the history of the business of hip hop. And I found so much value in terms of, wait, this is how hip hop really became a thing. But they started talking about things like 50 Cent's vitamin water deal, or these kind of like little events in hip hop and different label deals and how things were structured. But overall, it shaped this picture of how hip hop culture is ran. I think I have to take the time out not only to read the Russ book, but the Silver Rings book as well. I'll probably read the Silver Rings book first, to be honest, because that's
that one in the sense that it talks about that one album, and you know, from a perspective of just like reading online and the headlines, Wu-Tang has this one album,
it just seems being villainized and whatnot.
I mean, but when you actually get into how they came up with it and how they decided to market it, it wasn't just like, well, let's just make a one album. No, they had to like research about art dealers and stuff like that. It's really interesting. And then talking about the big thing, I think getting out of it is the devaluation of music. And I think in understanding that and how streaming has kind of done that, and forcing yourself to, I mean, anyone can make a song and put it up on Spotify. It could be the most amazing song. And I'll be the first to tell you, like, you know, I am not by any means like an amazing producer. I don't think so in my head anyways. I am an efficient producer and beat maker. I am but my whole thing is everything else and understanding like the marketing aspect of this stuff. And, you know, so it's like 50% beat making and understanding how to make a good song. And then the rest is all, well, how do I actually get it out there so people can hear it?
I think you're selling yourself a little bit short. I think one of the best things about being a producer, at least from a fan's perspective, this is something that always appealed to me as like the role of a producer or a beat maker in general. And this is honestly the reason why I've picked up an MPC in the past. And I ended up giving my MPC to DJ Moves. But I bought one because I wanted to end up getting into production. And the reason I wanted to get into production is because I was a fan of hip hop and I was a fan of these rappers, and I would sit there and envision what they would sound like over particular sounds, right? I'd sit there and be like, oh man, what if Eminem was to make an album over just like these types of instrumentals that are grimy and dirty and dusty? Or what if Self-Titled, I was a big Self-Titled fan at the time, and I still am, but what if Self-Titled ended up making an album that like just had like spaz out type instrumentals by Army of the Pharaohs, right? Like what if the artist that I liked did shit exactly how I like it? And I feel like being a producer, you're able to create the sound palette for the rapper to rap over, and in a way you're that's the best thing as a fan of the rappers, is to be able to like play with it and not just say, oh, you're rapping over my instrumental, but no, you're rapping over the instrumental that I want you to rap over. You're making the song that I always wanted you to make. And that's a beautiful thing. Because you sit there as a fan, you say, oh man, I what if this was to happen and these two were to link up and this was to come to be, or man, I would love for this to exist. And as a producer, you have the ability to make that a reality in such a more realized way than I think a rapper does in a lot of ways. But when you look at yourself, when you look at something like Bricks, with Rick Hyde and there's a few other cats on there as well, G Casino. Who else was on there?
And Blocklord, and then Distracted on the cuts.
Yes, Distracted on the cuts, and shout outs to Distracted as well. He came up in another conversation I had just recently, I think with Mickey Diamond. But he and I think your name actually came up in that conversation as well. It did come up in that conversation as people in Toronto that were doing things correctly. But when I look at a track like Bricks, I get that sort of fandom moment, right? Like, oh shit, here is Rick Hyde over shit that I want Rick Hyde to be over, right? And I feel like you share a lot of the same tastes that I do in terms of rap music, and maybe that's why it's able to come off that way. But nevertheless, I think that's one of the coolest things about being a producer, and I feel like you've executed on that idea very, very well. It's not just Bricks, but almost everything that you've done that I've heard seems to be like you're approaching it from a fan's perspective. If you work with somebody like Mickey Fax, for example, or Junk, or I don't know, just anyone that you've worked with in the past, Asa and Eastwood, it feels like you're approaching it from a fan's perspective and you're saying, no, this is how I want that to sound. And I imagine a lot of producers are approaching it from that angle, but I don't feel like not all producers are able to execute on that idea and have it actually turn out to be dope. And you do. I think you're honestly a fantastic producer. And I know your marketing strategy has been telling people that that's the case, but I truly hope that you believe it as well. You're a dope producer.
No, like I do, and thank you. It's more so like, you know, I think there are really dope or more technical producers. It's just, you know, it's I think what I like, where I really have a skill is seeing the bigger picture, and that's where I think the term producer over beatmaker comes in as well. Sure. I had something on my mind there, and then on what you're saying about you know, getting artists on what I want them on. I think it's a 50-50. So I'll have a general idea of what that artist's sound is, and then I usually curate a folder for them, and then from there I typically let them pick for the most part. For a song like you mentioned, Mickey Fax and Junk, I knew I wanted Mickey on that because I knew he could rap his ass off on it. And then once I got Mickey on there, I knew I wanted Junk on there because both of them were like backpack rappers. Was that the show? Was that the showcase, the backpack rap?
I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Okay, there was a showcase, and I believe both of them had been on it, and it was just, you know, they're both talented freestyles, wordsmiths, and I knew I wanted both of them. So I mean, in that sense, yeah, I'm weaving and crafting them into what I want, but at the same time, I do want to make sure they have their artistic freedom, because even myself as an artist, I know there's something to be said about artistic freedom, and if I try and pigeonhole them into what I want, it's not gonna create art per se. So you got to let them have some sort of freedoms as well.
That's fair. Yeah, man, that's 100% fair. I know we're kind of approaching the hour mark here. I want to talk about what you currently have on the go. So for those listening, again, you can check out things like Full Circle. That's been out for a while, though. I think, was it 2019 that you ended up putting this out? 2020?
That was January 2020.
Gotcha. So yeah, that's been out for a while. But check out some of the more recent shit that he's doing, because I think the more recent shit, the couple singles, I assume the Benny Butcher and Rick Hyde track is going to be kind of in that line. But these singles, I think, are crafting that new identity, right? They're placing you within a scene that I'm a big fan of, and I think fans of the show are going to be a big fan of. So really take the time to listen to these most recent singles. And I know you have the 7-inch coming out, and that 7-inch, by the way, is coming out with over the Chamber Records, or what's the
So the whole idea there too, I mean, a big part of this conversation has been marketing.
Yeah.
Is so I decided when I had this song is so again, I'm not gonna like hide anything, but I was trying to figure out the best way to market this song. And so I could have just been like, hey, it's Imperetiv. I got a new song that's got Benny the Butcher and Rick Hyde. Cool. Well, now people are like, well, who's Imperetiv and why should I listen to him? Sure, he's got Benny the Butcher. But in my mind and the psychology, I thought it would be, I already knew I was going to do it on vinyl. That was already a thing. So then it was just kind of like these ideas molded into creating a company, or like, it's not like a label per se, but it's a record company that produces strictly One in the Chamber records. So the idea is you have one track. So you got the song on one side, side A, and then you got the instrumental on side B. So that's the One in the Chamber is the vinyl itself. In the Chamber, like that relates to a 45 caliber revolver. Well, 45 caliber, 45 the vinyl, 7-inch, 45 RPM. So there's all this tie in there, and it all just like, and then when I abbreviated it, and I realized OITC, it's almost like an ode to DITC. So there's all this. And I was like, yo, this just is too perfect. So, promoting the song from One in the Chamber Records rather than it being just an Imperetiv track, it just made the most sense. And as I'm seeing right now, it's proving that that's accurate. Because what I was able to do is from the OITC Instagram, I was able to go to Benny's page and follow all of his followers. I wouldn't necessarily do that from the Imperetiv page because it just wouldn't come off correct. But coming from there, I'm promoting Benny and Rick Hyde from there. So people are like, oh, okay, this is a song with Benny and Rick Hyde. Oh, okay, some producer named Imperetiv. Maybe I'll check him out. You know what I mean? So I'm like downplaying myself, but in turn, people are going to kind of check me out. So that was kind of the whole logistics there. But yeah, One in the Chamber Records is dropping the Bandcamp exclusive drop of Under the Scope with Benny the Butcher and Rick Hyde. That drops this Friday, November the 12th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then a few weeks later, the track will drop on digital.
And the vinyl itself, 500 copies? Is that what you're pressing for this with a few different variants?
300 copies for now. Okay. I'm gonna do a special. I mean, I don't know if I should be saying this now, but there will. Yeah, never mind. I'm not gonna get into it. 300 copies for now. Splatter, yellow, and black with some OBs in there.
100 each, or how's the OB split up?
It's 50. It's basically, there's 100 splatter, divided in half with half OB, half not. It's 100 of each, but then divided in half with OBs.
And then you're doing prints as well. How many prints are going to be available? 10?
There's only 20. Those are going to sell out right away. The vinyl, I think the vinyl is going to do well, but the prints are going to go right away. Sepp has this crazy following that I've been realizing, and a lot of my new following has been coming from Sepp. So those prints, I feel like I'm going to have my like Westside Gun moment where these are going to sell out in 2 minutes.
Fair enough. The prints, are they going to be available on the Bandcamp page at the same time, or are they available through Sepp's store?
They're available through One in the Chamber, same time.
Gotcha. Man, I'm so excited to even be able to hear this single and to check it out and just have it in rotation. I said this before we started recording as well, but I've just been so impressed and excited and stoked on your behalf, seeing people like DJ Eclipse, seeing people like DJ Premier take notice of your name and start sharing these songs and value the art, then see the community embrace that as well, and see the Facebook groups and the Instagram people, and just see the hip hop community and the people that are really fucking with this new wave of rap music really start to check on your name. It's been a beautiful thing to see, and I'm so stoked to see your success, and congratulations, man.
Thank you. And then I know you'll like to hear this as well. So it's already planned. But December 17th, I got a track with Daniel Son and AM Early Morning coming out as well. So the Benny the track and Rick Hyde will drop, and then it's going to hit some with Daniel Son and AM Early Morning. And it's funny, man, like I know we're kind of we're close to the time here, but I had to remind myself the other day that some of these people are taking notice. Like there's levels. what's the quote? There's levels to this shit. You know what I mean? But those levels aren't always easily defined, and a lot of times they blur over with each other. So sometimes for myself, it's hard to realize which level I'm at, sort of. And I have to remind myself, like, yo, I worked hard to get here, and yeah, you are at this level. But I had a rapper of big stature in the underground community. Actually, that happened twice now. And I'll say the names. Actually, I don't know if I want to name drop or not. One, they hit me up in the DMs, and it went in my non-box because I wasn't following them just because they weren't following back. Some Instagram algorithm shit. But I had to be like, yo, is this real? At first I was like, yo, is this one of those mixtape scams? Like, I don't know. I just felt out the situation. I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, this seems real. And then someone else messaged me. They're like, oh, no, he messaged me too. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I let it go. But then I got an email. And I confirmed the email with another producer that works with that artist. And like, yeah, no, that's a real email. I was like, oh, shit. So I sent that artist some beats. And I knew they weren't the right beats. I just wanted to send stuff right away just because I had the email. And he actually responded. He was like, yo, these beats are all dope. Unfortunately, they're not the beats for me. And then I responded, yeah, I kind of figured, but I just wanted to send you something, let you know that, you know, I could send something very quick. And then another one recent was they just added me on Facebook and another artist. And I was like, took a picture of a screenshot of the Facebook profile and then messaged the guy on Instagram. I was like, yo, is this you? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Man, I'm excited for all the future work that you have coming out. I know you're busy doing these singles, and I know it's working, and I'm excited for them, and I'm digging them, and I'm going to be copying the vinyl whenever it drops. I'll be there refreshing the page in order to put my pre-order in. 100% I will be, but I can't also, like, front and say that I'm not excited for a future album of some sorts. I would love to be able to get another kind of follow up to Full Circle when you've been tapped into this scene and you're further developed and you're further along your career and you're able to put out this magnum opus album of just a producer album, right? Or even like one MC, one producer albums, because that's very common now.
So to end on that note then for you, is the Benny track will end up, I'm doing the single, but that will end up on Burial Plots and Pyramid Schemes, which will drop, I think, January or February.
Okay.
The vinyl, I'm not sure, just because the vinyl industry is a mess right now.
Sure.
But it will come out on vinyl if I have my way. Bricks will be a bonus track on that, on the vinyl. And I Have Sadiq will be a bonus track on that vinyl as well. So you're going to get Under the Scope with Benny and Rick Hyde, you're going to get Bricks, and you're going to get I Have Sadiq. Those are three. And then that Daniel Son that's sort of the starting. We're starting the rollout of Burial Plots and Pyramid Schemes right now. And that will be eventually a double project. So it'll be side A will be Burial Plots and Pyramid Schemes, and side B will be High Hopes and Lucid Dreams.
Man, I'm so stoked for all the future material that you have coming out. Even like, I know we were talking previously and you were saying like some of the shit that you have in the bag, like things with like G4 Jag, for example. G4 Jag's amazing. He's one of my favorites in this shit.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to be able to hear, for example, like a G4 Jag X Imperetiv album or EP, right? Like something 15, 20 minutes long, but over your sound. I think that works so well, and see you tap into that sphere as well, because I think there's a lot of growth and development in terms of that, and I feel like in a lot of ways, that's how a lot of these producers are starting to make a name for themselves, right? I think the single thing is working, and working with these cats on an individual song, but if you could make these kind of full-length projects or EPs or whatever you want to call them, press them up on vinyl with some of the artists that people are really fucking with in the scene. Like imagine like an Ito Imperetiv album or EP, 15, 20 minutes pressed on vinyl through Tough Kong or something. Wow.
I mean, the G4 thing might not be far off. I had a FaceTime with G4 the other day. We're talking about maybe me jumping down to New York in January to link with them, and he's in Rochester with Ito right now. So some of these things you're talking about may not be that far off.
Man, I'm excited. I hope everyone that's listening is excited as well. This has been a blast of a conversation, man. Thank you so much.
Man. Thank you.
You'll definitely end up coming on again. Like I said at the beginning here, I do consider you a friend. We've known each other over the last few years,
likewise.
And it seems like every conversation we hit it off fairly organically. So I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find
you?
Where can people stay up to date with you?
Everywhere. Instagram is the main one, but it's Imperetiv. That's Imperetiv. Listen to the kid. Yeah, that's it.
Man,
that's what I got.
Thank you so much. We'll wrap things up there.
Thank you. Hey, yo, this is Imperetiv. You're now tuned in to the Renaissance Show with Alex Kuchma. Listen to the kid.